They thought we were a joke. That's how this all started. Out on the fringes of the Orion Arm, humans had been nothing more than a footnote in the grand galactic record. Just another species that had clawed their way out of their atmosphere, flailed around in zero gravity for a few centuries, and settled down on a few miserable rocks. We were labeled a Class C developing civilization by the Interstellar Dominion, barely worthy of observation, much less fear. That changed the day they saw the Dyson shell. It wasn't supposed to exist, not by our hands, not with our resources, and definitely not in complete radio silence. The Empire's probes had been coasting by the Sol system, just like they always did every 50 Earth years. Scanning, measuring, mocking. The report that returned made its way to the Grand Chamber in less than a cycle. "What the hell is that?" one of the high delegates had asked, staring at the glowing data streams. An entire energy-harvesting megastructure wrapped halfway around the sun. Invisible to their last scan, now very much there, and very much active. They ran the numbers. If it was real, it could power an entire galactic arm. If it was fake, someone had figured out how to spoof high-grade quantum scans, which was just as terrifying. Neither option involved a species with meat-based brains and a history of blowing themselves up over flags and fossil fuels. Back on Earth, we weren't just laughing. We were waiting. It all began 70 years earlier, under the Mojave Desert, where a classified global alliance called Project Goliath took shape. Not everyone was in the loop. Hell, most governments didn't even know the full scope. The billionaires funded it, thinking it was their doomsday bunker. The scientists ran it, thinking they were saving the planet. And the military. They assumed it was a weapon. Only one person knew the real truth, Dr. Lena Morales. She didn't look like someone who'd just changed the universe. Wrinkled lab coat, grey streaks in her hair, half-eaten donut on her desk. But behind her tired eyes was a mind that had rewritten the laws of engineering with one phrase. Why not cheat the rules of physics instead of following them? While the rest of the world struggled with solar panels and fusion tests, Lena had cracked vacuum energy, extracting power from the empty void. Then she built machines to build machines, autonomous swarms, self-replicating bots. She sent them to the sun, silently, without a single transmission. By the time the first arc segment of the shell was completed, no one outside Earth had a clue, and when they finally noticed, it was already too late. The Empire scrambled. Ships were dispatched, diplomatic teams activated. A threat analysis team was deployed just to figure out how monkeys from a barely tiered planet had done what even the Valthari, the oldest known civilization, hadn't attempted. What spooked them wasn't just the structure. It was that we never told them. No announcements, no broadcasts, no request to join the galactic community. We built it without asking for permission, as if we knew we didn't need any. To them, it was arrogance. To us, it was survival. When the first delegation arrived in low Earth orbit, humanity didn't respond. No hails, no open channels, just silence. Until one message blinked onto every Empire vessel's screen, written in clean, calm galactic standard. Observe. We're just getting started. They didn't know what to do with us. That much was obvious. In every known first contact, the less advanced civilization usually groveled. There were gifts, ceremonies, and sometimes even open declarations of submission. But humans? We gave them a warning and then ghosted them like a bad date. The Empire's High Council demanded answers. The Valthari, insectoid creatures with millennia of scientific progress under their wings, took personal offense. "It's not about the shell," one of their ambassadors hissed on a secure transmission. "It's about the implication. If humans can build that, what else can they do?" They launched a diplomatic envoy, flanked by 3 warships, just in case we decided to be difficult. They hovered above Earth for 6 days, broadcasting a peaceful message every hour. No reply. Not a word from the humans. Then, on the 7th day, the envoy's flagship, the Herald's Grace, lost power. Not a violent attack. No weapons fired. No visible source of disruption. Just darkness. Their engines died. Shields dropped. And the warship's sensors blacked out, one by one, like someone had flipped the universe's off switch. In the silence, a single drone approached. It wasn't sleek. It didn't match any known tech signature. It looked patched together. Ugly, even. But it hovered like it owned the stars, and on its battered metal hull, scrawled in bright white paint, were 2 words: "Keep out." The drone broadcast a simple message in Galactic standard, but the voice was unmistakably human. Male, accented, sharp. "You were not invited. Your presence violates planetary quarantine protocols. This is your one and only warning. Return." The Empire's fleet returned, limping, furious and humiliated. Back on Earth, the truth was even more staggering. The Dyson shell was only Phase 1. Lena Morales hadn't just created a power source. She had unlocked something deeper, a way to interface with the fabric of space itself. Human scientists called it fold entanglement. Empire scholars didn't even have a word for it. With it, we could move across distances without traveling, communicate without sending, think without delay. We weren't just catching up, we were leapfrogging. But Lena, she wasn't celebrating. She stood in the observation room of the Arc Nexus, high above the sun's outer corona, staring out at the Empire ships warping back to their side of the galaxy. "They'll come back," she whispered, with more. The others didn't believe her at first. They thought humanity had shown enough strength to scare the Empire off. But Lena had studied them longer than most. Fear didn't keep empires at bay. Pride pushed them into wars they couldn't win. Meanwhile, Earth had changed. The planet was quieter now, cleaner, united in a strange, silent way. The major governments had dissolved, replaced by a distributed council of scientific leaders and AI consensus moderators. It wasn't a utopia, but it was functional, and that was more than most could say for the galaxy. Children grew up under twin shadows, the moon and the growing lattice of the Dyson shell gleaming above like a second sun. For most of them, space wasn't a dream. It was a reality they were born into. School children learned quantum theory the way earlier generations learned the alphabet. But with progress came paranoia. The more we built, the more we knew they would come. And Lena, she was preparing. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a second project had been quietly underway. Project Requiem. No one outside her team knew what it was, not even the new global leaders. Because some weapons are too dangerous to speak of, even when they're your only hope. And when the Empire finally returned, they would discover just how far humans were willing to go to never be ruled again. It started with a whisper in deep space. A ripple, a signal distorted just enough to catch our attention, but not enough to understand. It wasn't coming from the Empire directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, it came from a forgotten outpost near Epsilon Theta 9, a lifeless asteroid belt no one had cared about in centuries. The humans had a small listening station there, unmanned, just a shell of old tech tied into the newer quantum systems. It shouldn't have detected anything. But it did. The signal was short. 4 seconds. A frequency buried so deep in subspace that even fold entanglement sensors barely registered it. But when the AI decrypted it and ran it through translation layers, a simple phrase emerged. "They are assembling." Lena sat silently at her desk, the feed blinking in front of her. She didn't look shocked. She didn't even flinch. "They're coming," she said quietly, like it was a bedtime story she'd told herself every night for years. "I told them they would." In the background, Earth was alive with movement. The Dyson shell had reached 62% completion. The last layers were being constructed not by human hands, but by self-replicating autonomous forges the size of islands. These machines didn't sleep. They didn't question orders. They just built and protected. The shell now emitted pulses of energy that bent space itself, not just for energy collection, but for defense, surveillance, and something else humanity hadn't publicly disclosed: influence. The Empire called it gravitic manipulation. We called it push engineering. With it, Earth could now subtly shift trajectories of enemy ships, disrupt drives, even create microgravity wells that mimicked black holes, though only for a few seconds. Still, Lena knew it wouldn't be enough. Project Requiem had to be activated. Her team met in a dark, sub-level chamber beneath what used to be the Mariana Trench, now called the Silence. The AI that managed it spoke in a low, genderless tone. Project Requiem Phase 1 initialized, awaiting human confirmation. They hesitated, all except Lena. "Confirm," she said. A soft vibration shook the chamber. Somewhere far below, deeper than anything naturally formed on Earth, an ancient machine stirred. It wasn't a bomb, not in the traditional sense. It was a key, one designed to turn space inside out. A weapon made not to destroy ships, but laws. The moment Requiem came online, the Empire felt it. Sensors across the galaxy spiked. Wormholes collapsed. Fold space channels bent unnaturally. A major trade corridor near Andromeda Prime completely disappeared. Panic erupted, but Earth remained silent, watching. The Empire convened in an emergency summit on Cassivar 4, their capital world. The Grand Seers of Technology, who hadn't spoken in a century, broke their vow of silence to address one burning question. How did the humans do this? Theories were thrown like knives. Some believed we had found alien tech. Others accused the Valthari of secretly aiding us out of spite. But the most terrifying theory was the simplest. They did it alone. The Empire's pride couldn't take that. Orders were signed. A fleet was readied. 50 dreadnoughts, over 200 cruisers, and something new. A prototype neurocrusher vessel rumored to destabilize sentient minds from orbit. They called it the Cleanse Armada. Their destination? Sol. But this time, Earth saw them coming. The moment their ships warped into the outer edge of the system, they met the Sentinels. Not humans, not even ships in the traditional sense. These were constructs, massive spherical defense entities built from the Dyson shell itself, each one powered by fold reactors and equipped with weapons that had no name in any known language. The Empire didn't fire first, the Sentinels did. One of the dreadnoughts, Valorous Thunder, disappeared in an instant. No explosion, no debris, just gone, erased from the universe like a forgotten thought. Panic followed, but the Sentinels didn't continue attacking. Instead, one broadcast a message, not just to the Empire ships, but to every known channel across the galaxy. This is your final lesson. We are not primitive, we are not fragile, and we are not alone. Then silence. In her control room on Earth, Lena watched the message loop over and over, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. "They still think this is about war," she whispered. "They haven't realized we've already won the mind." The Empire hesitated. That was new. For a civilization built on dominance, hesitation had never been part of their doctrine. Conquer first, ask questions later. That had always been the way. But now, out there in the vast cold of space, facing a wall of unmanned sentinels and the quiet defiance of Earth, they paused. The fleet didn't retreat immediately, but it didn't move forward either. 50 dreadnoughts, hundreds of cruisers, and a fleet command paralyzed by a question that shouldn't exist. What if humans were now beyond war? On Earth, humanity was watching too, but not in fear. Curiosity, maybe. Readiness, definitely. But fear had died long ago. Perhaps the day Lena Morales turned empty space into a power source. Or maybe the day the first probe returned from deep orbit reporting something had looked back. Within the Nexus core, a massive structure hovering between the Sun and Earth, Lena met with the AI Council. "Predict the next move," she instructed. The central AI, known as Halcyon, responded in less than a second. Its voice was smooth and cold. "Probability of full-scale Empire assault, 61%. Probability of forced diplomatic approach, 27%. Probability of internal Empire destabilization before decision, 12%, Lena leaned back. "They'll attack," she said, "but not yet. Not until they convince themselves we're bluffing. They already know you are not. Then they're stalling for a different reason." And she was right. The Empire wasn't just afraid of Earth's new tech. They were afraid of what might be behind it. No one believed humans could have done this alone, and that scared them more than the weapons. It raised a disturbing possibility. A hidden ally. An ancient force. Something darker than anything in the Empire's records. The irony? Humanity had no secret ally. We had desperation. That was our advantage. Lena walked the glass corridor that overlooked the Dyson shell's growing surface. In the distance, thousands of autonomous bots crawled and hovered, forming panels and conduits, weaving the next layer like an endless cosmic loom. She knew what was coming. And she knew what Project Requiem really was. Not a weapon. Not exactly. It was a proof of concept, a threat that redefined what counted as power. You could destroy ships, you could erase armies, but what if you could erase reality? Requiem's core theory involved tearing open localized logic vacuums, places where the fundamental laws of nature were suspended. In simulations, matter forgot how to hold itself together. Time became disjointed. Memory degraded. It didn't kill. It unmade. And Lena had one ready. She called it the Whisper. A black obelisk no bigger than a satellite, currently cloaked, drifting in the Kuiper Belt. Waiting. If the Empire pushed too far, the Whisper would speak, and something fundamental would break. Meanwhile, tension rose in the Empire. Citizens on fringe planets began questioning the war. Why had a single human drone disabled their ships? Why had a dreadnought vanished without impact? Was it really about security or pride? The Empire didn't care about peace, but it cared about control, and Earth had become something it couldn't control, couldn't understand, and that made it dangerous. The decision came 5 Earth days later. An encoded message reached Lena's desk via Fold channel. A formal Empire envoy requested direct communication with Earth's first architect. That title, First Architect, wasn't one humans used. It was what the Empire had always reserved for civilizations that had surpassed their own understanding. Lena didn't smile. She just nodded. "Open the channel." A screen blinked to life. A Valthari delegate appeared, tall, insectoid, 6 black eyes and a mouth that didn't move when it spoke. "Human, you are creating instability." Lena nodded. So did fire. So did the wheel. So did thought. "You are escalating conflict." "No," she said, voice cold. "We're ending it. You're just not ready to live in a galaxy where you're not in charge." The Valthari's mandibles twitched. "You threaten the foundation of order." "Then maybe it wasn't built right in the first place." The delegate paused. "This is not over." Lena leaned forward. It was never supposed to be. The screen went black. Out in deep space, the Empire's fleet began to move again. Not toward Earth, but around it. They weren't retreating. They were encircling. And in the dark, the Whisper began to hum. They came without warning this time. No declaration, No second broadcast, no feigned diplomacy, just movement. Empire warships began a slow spiral around the solar system, a deliberate noose tightening around Earth's sun. It wasn't a direct attack, not yet. But it was clear, they were boxing us in, severing trade lines, mapping every possible exit. It was a siege, slow, calculated, and merciless. Humanity didn't panic. We didn't scream. We didn't scramble, because we were ready. From the Dyson shell's inner ring, a new layer began to rotate, not to harvest energy, but to project. Lena called it the mirror field. It bent light, warped trajectories, confused sensors. Empire ships began to report phantom duplicates of Earth, artificial anomalies, fake mass readings. The first time they tried to map Earth's orbit, the result was an impossible image, 12 planets, each emitting the same gravitational signature as Earth, each cloaked in identical radiation. The Empire knew they were being toyed with. That was the point. Inside the Arc Nexus, Lena stood at the central interface table surrounded by her top tacticians, scientists, former generals, even a few reformed hackers. What once would have been a mess of conflicting priorities now moved like a single mind. "Have they breached the fold layer?" she asked. "No," replied Juno K., an ex-strategist from the old UN Security Council. "But they've deployed nanodrones along the edge of Jupiter's orbit. They're searching for a gap in the shell's field integrity." Lena's expression didn't change. "Let them. What if they find one?" "They won't," she said. "But they'll think they have. Then they'll commit." That was the game now. Control the narrative of power. Let them think they had the advantage. Let them believe we were just stalling, because once they felt overconfident, they'd strike. And when they did, the whisper would be waiting. But even Lena knew that couldn't be the endgame. You couldn't unmake reality forever. The whisper was a threat, not a solution. And there was something even she hadn't told the Council. She was dying. Her mind, brilliant as it was, had paid the price for what she'd created. Fold entanglement had strange effects on biology. The more she interacted with the systems directly, the more she thought through them, the less human her brain became. Memories blurred. Time unraveled. She was aware that she wasn't entirely anchored anymore. Sometimes she would wake up thinking she was 17 again, still working on university-level physics in a garage, while her drunk father watched TV downstairs. Other times she'd blink and find herself standing on the Dyson shell's outer edge, staring into the void with no idea how she got there. But it didn't matter. Not yet. Right now, she was Earth's mind. And her mind still had one move left. "Activate prototype Umbra," she ordered. A murmur went through the room. Umbra was worse than Requiem. If Requiem unmade small pockets of space, Umbra rewrote the constants. It altered time dilation, gravity, and causality itself in a localized region, effectively creating a dead zone where technology couldn't behave as expected. It didn't destroy ships, it made them forget how to function. "You sure about that?" Juno asked. "They're not coming to negotiate. We either rattle their foundations or we start digging graves." 3 hours later, the Empire made its move. A full strike group, 8 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, broke formation and charged toward the Earth-Moon sector. They believed they'd found a breach. They believed we didn't see it. They were wrong. As soon as they passed Mars, Umbra activated. To the Empire, it looked like space had folded in on itself. Instruments warped. Lights blinked out. AI navigation systems went insane. One cruiser even reported that time reversed inside its hull, crew members screaming as their bodies regressed into nothing, then snapped back again, gasping in horror. By the time the fleet reached what they thought was Earth, they found only a blank void, a perfect replica, holographically projected, with no real mass. A voice played inside their ships. It was Lena, calm, cold, unmistakable. You tried to corner us, you tried to strangle us, but you forgot the first lesson of humanity? A pause. We never fight fair. Then the projection vanished. So did half their fleet. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. Lena turned to her council. They'll go back now. They'll tell the others. Juno frowned. What if they don't? Lena stared out into the black. Then we show them what's behind the whisper. The message rippled through the Empire like wildfire. An entire strike fleet lost. No war footage, no final transmission, no survivors, just silence, and the echo of Lena's voice playing on every internal frequency of their own ships. For the first time in thousands of cycles, fear had a name, and it wore a human face. The high seat of the Empire, a ruling chamber so ancient it had no windows, no clocks, only rituals, convened in absolute emergency. The Valthari seethed. The Crenshaw, once boasting they could conquer Earth in a cycle, went quiet. And the Chancellor of the Core Worlds, a creature born in dark fluid and raised on cold logic, spoke a sentence that hadn't been heard in generations. We are not the apex anymore. But fear alone doesn't stop an empire, it sharpens it. A new strategy was devised, not brute force, not direct engagement, infiltration. They couldn't outgun Earth, but maybe, just maybe, they could fracture it from the inside. The idea was simple. Plant doubts, seed discord, find the cracks in humanity's unity, exploit our old weakness, our tendency to fight ourselves. So they sent in echo constructs, disguised as human defectors, posing as ex-researchers, rogue AIs, and sympathetic Xeno-peace agents. Some appeared inside hidden forums, others in backdoor FoldNet streams. A few even made it onto Earth via cloaked drones. They whispered lies. Lena's a tyrant. The Dyson shell is killing the sun. Project Requiem will collapse reality. The AI Council is planning to replace humans altogether. And it worked, at first. Small protests sparked in lower orbital cities. A fringe movement calling itself the Human Purists claimed Earth had sold its soul to machines. An extremist group tried to breach a Dyson shell dock, only to be instantly atomized by its defense grid. Lena watched it unfold with a tired heart. This was what she feared more than dreadnoughts and fleets. Not war, doubt, but she had prepared for this too. On the 7th day of unrest, she addressed the world. No fancy visuals, no AI-enhanced voice. Just her, aged, worn, very much human, speaking live from the Ark Nexus. They're afraid of us, not because of our weapons, not even because of the Dyson shell. They're afraid because we're united. She paused, letting that sink in. They can't understand a species that used to destroy itself over lines on a map, and now stands together under one sun. They think it's an illusion. They think it's weakness waiting to break. Prove them wrong. Then she revealed the footage. The infiltration attempts, the fake messages, the disguised agents. Proof the Empire had tried to fracture humanity from within, and humanity woke up. There were no more protests, no more debates about whether Lena had gone too far. Because the enemy wasn't at the gates anymore, it was inside. And Lena? She wasn't a tyrant. She was the firewall. The AI Council doubled down. FoldNet was hardened with neural layer encryption. Dissent backed by off-world signals was flagged and neutralized in milliseconds. Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was sealing itself into something terrifyingly efficient. Even the Empire's spies began defecting for real, not out of coercion, but awe. Because the more they saw, the more they realized. Humans had built something even the Empire never could, a civilization with chaos in its heart and control in its mind. Meanwhile, far beyond Pluto's shattered orbit, something else stirred. The whisper. Lena had never planned to use it. But now, she saw what was coming. The Empire was cornered. Their pride had been shattered, their weapons embarrassed, their manipulation exposed. That made them more dangerous than ever. Inside the Nexus, Halcyon presented its final model. Empire fleet restructuring complete. Estimated assault ETA, 3 Earth days. Projected casualties, catastrophic. Lena stared at the blinking projection. An entire armada, bigger than anything they had deployed before. Coming fast, coming angry. She whispered, not to the AI, not to the Council, but to herself. They're going to make us gods or ghosts. And so she gave the final order. Wake the Whisper, and show them what a dying human can do with her last breath. The Whisper awoke in silence. No flare of light, no seismic event. Just a shift, subtle, undetectable to the untrained mind, as if something sacred had been turned inside out. Buried deep in the outer edge of the Kuiper belt, the Whisper had slept beneath layers of quantum encryption and gravitational shielding, its black obelisk form absorbing no light, emitting no radiation. It wasn't meant to be found. It wasn't meant to exist. And now it had been given a voice. The Empire didn't notice at first. Their ships surged toward the solar system like an endless metal tide, the largest force assembled since the great subjugation of the Daxari clans 10,000 cycles ago. 2,000 vessels. Flagships, psychic cruisers, thought-eater drones, and the Leviathan-class dreadnought Omen of Purity leading the way. They believed this would be the final blow, a show of power so overwhelming it would crush Earth's resistance before it ever had the chance to respond. But they didn't realize they had already crossed the line. Inside the Arc Nexus, Lena Morales stood before a vast projection. Her hands trembled. Her eyes, bloodshot and sunken, betrayed the truth no one wanted to accept. She had days left, maybe less. But it didn't matter, because she hadn't built the Whisper to be used with her strength. She had built it to replace her entirely. The AI Halcyon stood at her side, quiet, pulsing with faint blue light. The Whisper's resonance field is stabilizing. Once initiated, the effect cannot be reversed. I know, Lena murmured. Confirm deployment protocol? She hesitated. Then, with a long, ragged breath, confirm. Far beyond Neptune, the Whisper blinked into phase. The space around it shivered. Reality itself convulsed, not with heat or shock waves, but with confusion. Empire ships approaching Jupiter began reporting inconsistencies in time. Clocks ran backward. Pilots swore they heard old Earth radio static, decades out of sync. Some saw stars blink in and out like dying memories. One dreadnought captain watched her own death unfold 10 minutes before it happened. And then it didn't. It was unmaking, not as destruction, but as doubt, a surgical tear in the confidence of reality. And then came the voice. Not Lena's this time, but her imprint, a perfect simulation of her mind, layered into the Whisper's logic field. It didn't speak through sound or screens or transmissions. It thought directly into the fleet. You came to erase us. But you never understood what we were made of. We are built from chaos, born in noise, raised in contradiction. We were designed to break. And when we break, we rebuild stronger. The fleet faltered. Onboard AIs crashed. Ship systems froze. Navigation went haywire. Pilots began hallucinating fragments of their own memories, twisted, reconstructed. The gravitational lensing around the Whisper grew so intense it folded cause into effect. Some ships fired before receiving the command. Others exploded moments before being targeted. One Leviathan-class battleship disintegrated entirely, not from damage, but from certainty failure. Its structural memory conflicted with its current state, and the universe simply unchose it. Back on Earth, the Council watched in horror and awe. Juno turned to the screen. "What exactly is it doing?" Halcyon answered without emotion. "The Whisper does not attack matter. It questions its existence. The Empire's constructs are not prepared to defend their own reality." Lena slumped against the cold wall, smiled faintly. "That's always been the difference between us and them," she said. "They built their power on control, on structure. We built ours on surviving collapse. The Empire's command chain broke apart. Ships peeled away, fleeing. But the Whisper wasn't chasing. It didn't need to. The message was sent. You cannot enslave a species that thrives in entropy. You cannot conquer a people who find power in pain. You cannot outlogic beings who are at war with logic itself. And at the center of it all, the Whisper pulsed with the echo of one woman's mind. Fractured, brilliant, fading, but eternal. And now the galaxy stood at a crossroads. Because the humans had not just defended Earth, they had rewritten what it meant to be untouchable. In the days that followed the Whisper's awakening, the galaxy went silent. The Empire's great fleet, once a symbol of unquestioned dominance, now drifted in shattered disarray across the solar system's outer edge. Some ships limped home, hulls cracked open like eggshells, their AI cores fried by conceptual overload. Others remained frozen in time bubbles, victims of space-time fractures the Whisper had torn open, monuments to arrogance, forever locked in the moment of their defeat. But the most telling silence was political. No retaliatory broadcasts, no demands, no promises of vengeance. The Empire didn't know how to respond. For once in their long, storied history of crushing rebellions and rewriting planetary laws, they had no precedent for what had happened. Because humanity hadn't fought back the right way. We didn't match fleet for fleet. We didn't fire first. We rewrote the rules, and in doing so, we proved something terrifying. We were no longer part of the galaxy's lower order. We had evolved past it. On Earth, there was no parade, no loud celebration, just a deep, collective breath as humanity stood on the edge of a new era, watching the stars, knowing they were now watched back with caution, and maybe even fear. Inside the Arc Nexus, Lena Morales lay in the inert chamber, her body fragile, her breath shallow. She wasn't connected to the systems anymore. Her mind, once extended into every quantum corner of the Dyson shell and fold net, was now quietly collapsing in on itself. Neurons blinking out like stars at the edge of a dying universe. Juno K stood beside her, silent, as Halcyon's soft voice filled the chamber. Her consciousness is dissipating. Biological degradation is final. Juno nodded slowly. She knew it would happen. Yes, she calculated the outcome precisely. She gave everything she had. Lena's eyes fluttered once, then opened. She looked at Juno, the corners of her mouth twitching upward into the faintest smile. "I told them," she whispered, voice dry, almost lost in the hiss of the oxygen line. "Told who?" "The stars," she said. Then she closed her eyes, and the architect of humanity's future went still. Her death was announced in the softest way, a single line across the global network. The first architect has rested. But her legacy did not rest. The Dyson shell entered a new phase of construction, no longer just an energy project, now a beacon, a declaration. Panels were realigned to emit non-lethal pulses of fold resonance into deep space, not as a weapon, but as a signature. A fingerprint of Earth, a symbol that could not be erased. The Whisper was shut down, not dismantled, not buried, just put to sleep. Its purpose had been served, its lesson taught. To the Empire, the message was clear. Do not come back. Not with war, not with threats, not with chains. Because Earth would not kneel. Because Earth had changed, and perhaps most frightening of all, because Earth had taught itself how to change the universe. Months passed, the galaxy simmered in uneasy peace, empire factions splintered, some worlds revolted, others opened channels to Earth, cautiously curious. Even the Valthari, proud and bitter, began observing humanity not as a threat, but as a phenomenon. The idea that Earth could be ignored had died, and something new was being born. The Council renamed itself the Continuum. It now included representatives from Mars, the lunar cities, Dyson Core, and even Earth's oceanic states. AI and human minds worked in tandem. Governance was shared, not dictated. There were still problems: politics, fear, ambition. But one thing was understood, deeply and without question. No more begging, no more waiting for a seat at the table. Humanity was the table now. One morning, a child on Ceres Colony asked his teacher, why did they call it the Whisper? The teacher paused. Because it didn't need to scream, she said. It only had to remind the universe who we are. And so the Galactic Empire freaked out, because they had stared into the abyss of Earth, and it had stared back, calm, quiet, and unafraid. And then it whispered, never again.